Here's Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. After Canucks on ice, in uniform, playing games this weekend at the Prospect Showcase. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. And yeah, it's always good to have hockey back, even in a brief Prospects weekend showcase. And I've made this point to others. I've seen people call it a tournament. When it's two teams playing two games in 24 hours,
no,
that's a showcase.
Not a tournament. Not a tournament.
No trophies were presented. There was no on-ice celebration. I don't think they did players of the game or anything. It was Prospects hockey. It's exactly what it was, and the results really don't matter, although it's kind of fitting, I guess, that they split so each team can take a victory away. But it's far more about the performance of the individuals. And I caught some of both games on the stream. I didn't sit and invest hours upon hours, but certainly I've seen the highlights of the goals and read the accounts of people that were on the ground there. And it sounded like there were some real positives for the Vancouver Canucks to come out of a weekend like that one.
I want to go through a couple of the particulars here, Jeff. I'm not sure we talked about this Friday when we had you on the program, but I got to say I was a little surprised to see Elias Pettersson on this team. I thought he was a fully formed NHLer after last season and after they didn't dispatch him to Abbotsford to take part in the Calder Cup playoff run. He throws a big hit in this hockey game. He looks a little bit shaken. Tell me your sense. Were you at all surprised to see him in this showcase? And what's your forecast for him this season? Where do you think he fits? What does a good season look like for Elias Pettersson?
Well, first, when they put the roster out last week, that name jumped out at me only because I kind of felt that they didn't see the need to have him in Abbotsford, the Calder Cup run, but now they're sort of backtracking and playing him in a Prospects tournament. Now, I think the important thing to remember is his age here. He is still so young that he fits in with that sort of group. It's just that his development has advanced to the point where he got in 28 games at the National Hockey League level, and there was really no looking back. So I think for any of these young guys, when they're asked to play in these things, they just have to look at it as, all right, I'm going to get 2 games under my belt before I get to main camp, and hopefully I'm revved up and ready to go. And there's no real downside to it. It was kind of funny as I watched and looked through the rosters in both teams. Of course, Coachella Valley played Abbotsford early in the playoffs, and so there were a number of names I recognized on the Seattle list from Coachella Valley, so they had a bunch of their AHL guys as well. It really was a mixed bag this weekend, and I guess, like, to me, it would, I think, serve the fan bases well if the parameters were laid out clearly for who does get selected, who's allowed to play. Like, are there minimum thresholds of professional games? I was curious around young stars always about who was there and who wasn't. Like, the Canucks had a 26-year-old this weekend playing for them, a guy that had played college hockey. Didn't have a lot of pro games under his belt, but you had a 26-year-old. You had guys that like Braden Coots that were drafted in June and were getting their first taste of anything like this. So we'll get back to DPD in a sec, but if there was one downside to the weekend, it was that Braden Coots left the game on Saturday, didn't play on Sunday. This is a guy that wasn't able to participate in the summer showcase for the World Junior team, missed Seattle Thunderbirds training camp. We were told it was precautionary and that he should be good to go at main camp, but now you're going up against guys that have been doing this for a living. These are the best of the best. Like, is he 100%, and will he be able to put his best foot forward at main camp? So that'll be a storyline moving forward. As for DPD, I certainly have him in the mix for an NHL roster spot. And then the question is, can he advance ahead of Derek Forbort? Is he slotted in ahead of a guy like P.O. Joseph? So I've got DPD making this hockey club out of training camp, but I also wonder, like, is he a lineup guy? Is he a roster guy? How does it shake down? And certainly that's going to be one of the battles for me here moving forward is you've got the veteran in Forbort. We know what his penalty killing utility. Is he still an everyday player because of that skill set? Or has DPD advanced to the point where it's going to be a platoon situation? We know that DPD played over on the right side. I talked to P.O. Joseph the other day out at UBC, had a good chat, and I wrote about him at Canucks Army. He was quick to point out that he played on the right side at the NHL level, the AHL level, played some in junior as well, says, hey, when they ask you to do something, you do it. And so he kind of looks forward to the challenge here. He's a little bit of the forgotten man in all of this. And then, of course, you've got Mancini and Tom Willander, who it sounded like he had mixed results from this weekend south of the border. So maybe we slow the roll a little bit on Willander, but I'm all aboard the DPD train. I liked everything I saw from him last year. I love the development and how quickly it's come along in North America. And this guy can play. And it's just a question of, does he play every night, or is there still, I think we all know there's still some learning to be done on the job, but does he get that opportunity to do it in games, or is he going to have to be patient? And will the hockey club be patient with him to bring him along at the proper pace?
No one is going to project a poorer career of Tom Willander because he, had a tough night. But, they played a game. We look at that game, we review it, and we give our opinions on the game. He gets beaten outside. He was pinching and making some poor decisions there. I mean, he had a bad night on Saturday night. To me, it's a great time for him to have a bad night because I think he probably didn't expect maybe the speed of the game to be as good as it was. I mean, these are really high-level prospects in this game. To me, it's a great shot across the bow before main camp of, it has to be tip-top every single night.
Right. I think he's a bit of an X factor because we haven't seen him play anything above college hockey, I guess the World Juniors, but in terms of turning pro, so he comes to his first camp here with an opportunity to blow the doors off people, but if it doesn't happen, that's not a big deal. This is a young player. We know that defensemen generally take a little longer to develop at the pro game. If he has to start in Abbotsford and play there and play a lot, that ultimately is probably what's best for this player, both short and long term. So I get that people have coveted a right shot defenseman through the draft and develop. We know the history with this hockey club. You got to go back to Kevin Bieksa to find the last time that the Vancouver Canucks drafted and developed their own every night regular in the National Hockey League. Hopefully Willander has a long career. But yeah, I just think when you look at the depth chart, when you look at waiver eligibility and those types of things, the easiest place for him to start probably is in Abbotsford. But let's give the kid a chance. Let's see what he looks like against other pros at main camp, and I'm sure he'll get a look through the preseason as well. But yeah, kind of stumbled out of the gate, if you will, for the first time wearing a Vancouver Canuck uniform. But weeks and years from now, that will be a mere footnote. I don't think anybody's going to base their projections on Tom Willander.
It won't even be that.
It's not even that. It's not even that. If he goes on to be everything that people anticipate he will be. Jonathan Lekkerimaki, Jeff, what's your forecast for him this season? Because much like DPD, I think there's a question about, I suspect he'll play this year at the NHL level, but how much? Because they may really need his scoring at some point as a natural scorer. What did you see from Lekkerimaki? What does a good season for him look like in 25-26?
Yeah, I was glad to see him score a goal. He is a goal scorer. We know that. And he did a lot of it in the regular season last year down in Abbotsford in his first year as a North American pro. I still think that there's feeling out there that maybe he underwhelmed or underachieved last year. But really, when you look at his age and his first look at pro hockey in North America, 19 goals in 36 regular season games. It was a remarkable pace. And the fact that he got into NHL games and scored in the National Hockey League, I think all things considered, his first year to be around and part of the Calder Cup Championship as well, nothing but good things for Jonathan Lekkerimaki. Now, we all know the shortened summer here, probably didn't have time to put in the work necessary to put on the pounds that will be required. But look, he's a goal scorer. He scored over the weekend. I think that's great. Just get that feeling of putting a puck in the net early in the season. The longer it goes without, the more he starts to doubt, the more people start to wonder, is this guy the real deal? All that kind of stuff. So I think, again, it's just a prospect showcase, but you want to see guys play to their strengths, and his strength is finding the puck in front of the net and wasting no time putting it in. So, it didn't sound like he was the best player on the ice for either team, but I just like the fact that he comes out of a weekend like that one feeling good about his goal-scoring exploits, and now really curious to see where he's slotted. This is one of the things for me, guys, heading into training camp, and it's not just Jonathan Lekkerimaki. It goes for a lot of the guys that had nice playoff runs in Abbotsford. Where are they going to be slotted? Because I think that will be a pretty good tell about what the organization is thinking. I always want to see guys like this put in a position to succeed. Remember last year, he did. He skated in camp and through the preseason with top-line National Hockey Leaguers, and I like that. They were insulating a young guy and trying to put him in a position to succeed right away. So that's going to be, as much as I look at the individual performances from the team perspective, how do they slot these guys? Like, I remember going way back, and it always felt like, Josh Holden was a first rounder, and he could never get traction at training camp. They would never play him with other good players, and I never really understood that line of thinking. But, whether it's Lekkerimaki, whether it's Linus Karlsson or Arshdeep Bains, Max Sasson, where are they going to slot these guys? Last year at camp, Atu Ratu was one of the darlings. He played with Höglander and Garland throughout, and he made the opening night lineup last year when Pia Suter got hurt in the preseason. So, I do think that is something that you can take away from training camp, as brief as it is organizationally, how do they look at some of these players and where do they place them on the depth chart and on the ice?
The thing with these prospects games too is, there's a big disparity in skill level. They can be a little bit messy at times, and it can be tough sometimes for skilled players like a Lekkerimaki, for instance, to really show their wares. You need sort of a separating skill sometimes, or God-given setup, like Vilmer Alriksson, who scores maybe the goal of the weekend, going straight up the gut, using that big frame and reach to, make it impossible to take the puck off him, and scores a beautiful goal. He's an X-Factor guy, not for this year. I'm not going to get people excited for this year, but that's an exciting project, Vilmer Alriksson, for the future. And, full professional season ahead for Alriksson. Whether he can skip the ECHL and go straight to Abbotsford remains to be seen. But I think people should pay attention to what Alriksson does this season, wherever he is.
Yeah, and this goes back to the times I've seen him at the summer development camps. I mean, he stands out just simply because he is so much bigger than everybody else. And you can't teach size. We know that. And so right there, he's an intriguing prospect. And, when we look at the pros and the cons of this management group and the things that they've done and have they advanced the program, one area that you have to give them their flowers is mid to late round picks that they have unearthed and have been able to develop, and hopefully Alriksson's in that group. But when I look at Kirill Kudryavtsev, or we talk about DPD, or, they've found guys later in rounds that they believe in and see something there that they think can make a player into a National Hockey Leaguer. And DPD's already there. Kudryavtsev got in games late last season, and now Alriksson. And the other thing, too, is getting to work under the tutelage of Manny Malhotra if, in fact, he sticks in Abbotsford. We know the work that Manny did last year with a player like Ty Mueller. Different skill set, obviously, but I'm confident now in sort of the player development, the work that Manny can put in. And when you've got a player that has that side as a frame, it's how does he use it effectively? How does he protect the puck? How does he make sure that the puck arrives at the front of the net when he does? And, lean on guys to sort of create some space and separation. But, for all the things you said there, Blake, absolutely. And didn't look out of place because of his size at training camp last year. Got into the preseason, got in a scrap in a preseason game against Seattle. When you play in the OHL and you're that big, you're going to get challenged. It sounded like he didn't back down. I think he understands that, he's not going to be fighting every night. But if you're big and you're using your size effectively, hey, trouble may come and find you from time to time, and you have to be ready to fight those battles. So, another year older now, has the experience of a training camp and a preseason under his belt from last year. How does he apply that? He's certainly going to be one of the guys that I watch, and fortunately, he's very easy to pick out of a crowd, even at main camp, just because of his size on skates.
Point us forward here, Jeff. Training camp week for the Vancouver Canucks. What's your understanding of everything that's going to take place this weekend when we get to Penticton?
Yeah, look, we all remember, unfortunately, the images of Olli Levy lying in the corner of the rink out in Abbotsford after the bag skate under Travis Green, OEL having his struggles as well. I heard a few of the Canuck players last week at UBC talking about getting their skating tests out of the way before main camp. So I think that some of that's going to be done behind closed doors this week. We're expecting to hear from, I think, Jim Rutherford and Patrick Elvine. That's sort of in standard practice on the eve of training camp. Last year it was in Penticton, but my understanding is that that's going to happen on Wednesday here at Rogers Arena before they make their way to the South Okanagan. And I would think Adam Foote probably is on that dais as well. And then for as much as we talk it up and we all wait all summer and we look at job openings and all those types of things, we're looking at 3 days of on ice, essentially. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The Canucks play their first preseason game in Seattle on Sunday night. So they've got to send a team to Climate Pledge on Sunday. So really what you're looking at is Thursday and Friday, full practice days. Saturday, there's going to be the scrimmage in there as well. And then they pack up and head on out of the Okanagan and they get into the National Hockey League preseason, which is 6 games this year, including one out in Abbotsford. So it's short, it's sweet. By this time next week, we'll have a preseason game to digest and break down. Forget about what happened late into the training camp weekend. So look, they're going to try to cover as much ground as they can with a new head coach and a new coaching staff. But we know that Adam Foote, a disciple of Rick Tocchet, I would think that training camp will look and feel a lot like the kind of camp that Tocchet conducted. I think it's a positive that it's in Penticton, and for Adam Foote, you're just removing variables as a first-year guy. He's familiar with the building. He knows where the meeting rooms are. He knows where the lounge. It may sound stupid to say, but I think if you can just remove any of those sort of obstacles so that he can put all of his focus into what goes on the ice, then I think that sets up a rookie head coach to have a successful first training camp.
Now, I'm interested in hearing more from Foote. We've barely heard from him since the introductory press conference, not to mention seeing if he gives us any clues, tips in terms of how he wants to play. And then you mentioned battles, Jeff. Fourth line winger, I think, Carlson, Lekkerimaki, Sasson, Baines, Kraftsov, all vying there. Probably going to keep a spare forward as well. And then I think you hit it earlier, DPD Forbert and Pierre-Olivier Joseph in terms of who's going to play third pair on what side and who will be the scratch on opening night. If they stay healthy, is that it? Is that it in terms of training camp battles? Do you see anything else afoot there?
No, I mean, I think Atu Ratu is penciled in as one of their 4 centers, so that puts a little pressure on him to hold up his end of the bargain. And again, he had a really good training camp last year, and I hope that that's fresh in his mind, even though 12 months have passed. But, he knows the approach that worked for him last year, so I hope he's able to bring that in. I've had people asking me about, what's he looked like out at UBC. Again, they're informal summer skates, but he doesn't look limited in any way because, of course, the last time we saw him, he wasn't playing out in Abbotsford with the 2 injuries that he suffered in the Calder Cup playoffs. So I'm curious to talk to him. I haven't had that opportunity yet, but he is one of the guys that I certainly hope to get some time with up in Penticton just to find out a little bit about his offseason. But I would put that on the list, Matt, that, if it isn't going the way that he and the Canucks want, then what? Which brings us back to the broader question about depth down the middle for this hockey club. But yeah, in terms of absolute jobs to be won, I think you laid it out there that, fourth line wing spot, I would give Linus Karlsson the inside track based on the terrific playoff that he had and the fact that he has played a little bit for the organization in the National Hockey League. And also, I wonder if he can be one of these sort of newer age players that can play on the fourth line but could also slot in on the second line power play and be that net front guy that he had so much success in the playoffs, scoring a lot of goals in and around the blue paint. So I could sort of see that as the role. Arshdeep Baines gives you what he can, but there has been zero bottom line at the NHL level. And he was slow to get going in the playoffs last year, arrived ultimately, and turned out to be one of the top scorers for Abbotsford on the run to the championship. But it's at a point where he can't just get into NHL games any longer. Like, if he's going to contribute, even if it's in a fourth line, like, I'm not expecting big numbers, but it can't just be 1 point in however many games he's played to this stage of his brief NHL career. So I would put Karlsson slightly ahead of Baines. Sasson is still waiver exempt, and that probably works against him right out of the gate. And the other thing to keep in mind here, guys, is because of waivers, I wonder if they start the season with 14 forwards and 7 defensemen, as opposed to, as we've seen in the past, 13 forwards, the 1 extra forward, but 2 spare defensemen. Of course, that makes it easier to practice when you've got 4 defensive pairs, and you can just run through some of the things like that. But in the early going, until the dust fully settles here, I wonder if it's easier for them to keep a couple of the guys up front that require waivers to get through. And so it wouldn't shock me if this year they started the year with 14 forwards.
Sasson and Lekkerimaki are waiver exempt. The other 3.
Baines has got to get above the Mendoza line, which in Canuck parlance is the Nils Åman line, who, by the way, still exists for the Vancouver Canucks, Nils Åman. But yeah, you can't just play. You do need to periodically contribute. Rather than winning jobs, I think winning roles is going to be just as important. And we always caution that, not to overanalyze what we see in drills. And yet, Jeff, I've come to the conclusion now at this late stage in my life. Coaches do line rushes in training camp that they are more often than not pretty committed to for the opening month of the season at the very least. And yeah, do they change them throughout the games? Yes, they do. But it is pretty much the default position by sort of day 2 of training camp. The line rushes that you see, sort of what he wants, because it is so short. So he wants to take a good look at what he thinks is likely the best setup for his squad. So, they can say, oh, don't read into anything what I'm doing. It is often what they go with on opening night.
Well, look, nothing happens by chance at this level, first and foremost. So you're right. Everything's done with design. The only caveat there is sometimes a young player like Lekkerimaki, they want to put him higher in the lineup so that he does have an opportunity, even though they knew that he wasn't going to make the team last year out of camp. But for the most part, like last year, Ratu was between Garland and Höglander, and I think they saw that as a legitimate possible third line. And they played some games early on because Pia Suter was hurt. Once he got back, then things changed there. Just sort of further to this, I guess a guy like Kravtsov to me is going to be under the microscope. Like, he cannot dip his toe into training camp. He can't rest on the laurels of being the 6th leading scorer last year in the KHL. So, he has to show that he means business. And I think it's fascinating. I was out at UBC twice last week, and they had the veterans and the guys that are fully under contract. They skated in one group. And then players like Nils Åman and Kravtsov and others were in the second group of the day. And so I'm not sure who's making up the 2 groups and who gets, who makes the grade and who doesn't. But I just thought it was interesting that Nils Åman, who's been here, has played in the NHL, played with this group. He wasn't part of the first group of the day, either day that I was out there. And so this comes back to, where do they slot him? Like, you want to give Kravtsov an opportunity. Maybe he's a changed man. He's 2 years older. He's had some success. Maybe he comes in with some confidence that he didn't have the last time around. But do they slot him with other AHL guys that are true AHLers? And what can you take from that? So, yeah, look, at some point this week, we will get... we still don't have, full daily schedules. We don't have the groups and the way that they're going to skate. But at some point this week, all of that will become public, and I think we probably can read into some of it.
Excellent. Look forward to it, Jeff. Look forward to Friday. We'll be at Yellow Dog in Penticton doing the program and attending training camp. We'll have you back then. Thanks for this.
All right. Have a great week, and we will see you in Penticton.